Hello and welcome to Breakfast or Pancakes. I'm your host, PK Sullivan. Thanksgiving here in the US is just around the corner, so today I'm going to show you how to do a quick and easy cranberry sauce. Cranberry sauce is a classic Thanksgiving side, really just a simple cranberry compote. A compote is a sauce made of fruit that is cooked with liquid and sugar. I like to make my own cranberry sauce because I can add some flavor and depth to the dish. A number of years ago, we were doing Thanksgiving with some friends here in Chicago, and our friend V made her homemade cranberry sauce. What really sets this cranberry sauce apart from the canned stuff is that it uses spices. The other thing that V does is uses apple juice as the liquid base for making the compote. The natural sugars in the apple juice help sweeten the cranberry sauce, so you don't need to use quite so much granulated sugar. You still use a good amount of sugar because cranberries are very tart and very bitter without it, but you don't have to use as much granulated sugar. It's also a nice added layer of flavor. You have the flavor of the apples coming through in a very slight background way. V's original recipe uses ground spices. It's quick, it's convenient, and it's easy, but it leaves a grittiness in the final sauce that I don't really like. I've updated the recipe to use whole spices. I basically create a mulled apple cider that I use as the liquid in my compote. The spices give their wonderful, earthy, vibrant fall notes without changing the texture of the final sauce. Rather than have this be a traditional compote where the berries are left whole, I like to toss it into the food processor, give it a few quick pulses just to break up the berries and give it a nice spreadable texture. This is a recipe that can be done up to a week ahead of time. You can serve it warm, you can serve it chilled. Quick, easy recipe that you can get done ahead of time for your Thanksgiving and just have ready when you need it. Ingredients: 8 to 10 allspice berries, half a nutmeg seed, a stick of cinnamon, 5 mils of cumin seeds, the zest of 1 orange, the juice of that same orange, about 450 mils of apple juice or cider, 800 grams of cranberries, 400 grams of granulated sugar. Add your spices to a medium saucepan and toast them over medium heat until fragrant. I'm using allspice, nutmeg, cinnamon, and cumin for this compote, though I forgot to toast the cinnamon. You can use whatever spices you want. Cloves would be good, and I've used a vanilla pod in the past. A recipe is just a starting point. I encourage you to experiment and make them your own. Once the spices are fragrant, add your apple cider, orange juice, and the orange zest. This will splatter and steam quite a bit since the pan is going to be very hot. While cumin isn't normally a spice you'd want in a mulled cider, it's kind of the star of the show in the final dish because it does something magical with cranberries. The earthiness of the cumin shines through as a counterpoint to the bitter tart flavor of the fruit. Give it a good stir and add that cinnamon stick you forgot. Bring the pot up to a boil and reduce to a simmer. Cover and let it cook for 10 to 15 minutes. By simmering the spices in the juice, we are extracting the various flavor compounds and infusing the liquid. This is the same process as making mulled wine or mulled cider. Cover the pan to prevent evaporation. You don't want to reduce the liquid. That just makes it more likely that the sugars will scorch when we finish the compote. Once your timer goes off, set your mulled cider off to the side. Sorry, couldn't resist. It's time to mix up the compote. Add your cranberries and sugar to a Dutch oven or large nonstick skillet. Don't use cast iron or carbon steel here. The cranberry acid will eat away at the seasoning. Then strain the cider through a fine mesh sieve onto the cranberries. Turn the heat on high and start stirring. Mix until the sugar is dissolved and the cranberries are all nestled in the liquid. The sugar will dissolve quickly, but that's only the start. This needs to cook until the berries burst and the liquid thickens. Cranberries have a tough skin that needs to be cooked to be palatable. When the berries are cooked, the skin softens and the liquid inside begins to expand and turn into steam. The combination of weakened skin and increased pressure is what makes the berries burst. That's exactly what we want, because when the berries pop, they release a huge amount of pectin, the compound that thickens and sets jams and jellies. It will do the same thing for our sauce, though not quite to the same degree. Let the cranberries simmer until they've all burst and release their juice and pectin, about 10 or 15 minutes. Stir every so often just to keep things from scorching. Once your berries have all burst and are nice and tender, your compote is ready to eat. However, I like to toss them in the food processor and give them a few pulses to break up the berries. This results in a smoother, more spreadable sauce. This step is entirely optional. You do you. This is me doing me. I didn't have cranberry sauce growing up as a kid, but as an adult I've come to appreciate that it is the sweet and sour counterpoint to all of the heavy starches and rich fatty gravy that shows up on a Thanksgiving plate. It's an essential part of a balanced Thanksgiving meal. There we go. There you have a cranberry sauce that is actually sauce-like. Like I said, you can make this up to a week in advance, let it cool off, stick it in the fridge, and it's just fine. When it cools, it sets up because cranberries do have pectin that gets released while you do the cooking. It's not going to fully set up into a jelly or a jam, but it's pretty close. As you can see, it's already very thick, very sticky. Coats the back of a spoon just quite beautifully. It's got all the sweetness and a little bit of the sour. The bitter is sort of an aftertaste. It's not very strong. The earthy spices help temper that, as does the sugar and the orange juice. The orange zest helps lift up the flavors as well, so it's not all just earthy and bitter. This is the cranberry sauce that made me a fan. This batch is going to be on my Thanksgiving table, and I hope you give it a shot. 20 minutes on the stovetop and you have an absolutely wonderful cranberry sauce. This week's shout out obviously goes to my friend V. Hope you aren't offended that I took your recipe and made a few changes. Thank you so much for sharing your recipe with me over the years so that I have a cranberry sauce that I can make and love. Please like and subscribe. If you care to support me as I go on this cooking adventure, you can do so at Patreon. Link is in the show notes. See you next week.